from the Republic Media Network headquarters, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate. Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You have seen an escalation in the diplomatic war between Canada and India, and though Canada is not India's equal by any measure, it's a smaller economy, a smaller country, not very powerful. But the fact of the matter is, it has decided to link its internal politics to its relationship with India. And I just wanted to start by explaining to you how stupid this Trudeau is, ladies and gentlemen. Justin Trudeau. He's stupid because he thinks we can't see through what he's doing. The fact of the matter is he's going to lose the election. He has a minority government, a very weak government. He's a very weak prime minister who has lost one of his major allies, a man called Jagmeet Singh, leader of the New Democratic Party. He's the main crutch of Trudeau's slender majority. And today, if there is a confidence vote in Canada, Justin Trudeau knows that he cannot win that confidence vote. In other words, he's hanging by a thread. He can go anytime. So he's trying to become very pro-Khalistani, very pro-Khalistan terrorist. And he's realized that the more pro-Khalistan terrorist he becomes, he has some chance of surviving. But Justin Trudeau, you're completely wrong there. You're only going to end up embarrassing yourself and being known as a global terrorist supporter. Point number 2, ladies and gentlemen, is that he has to appear before the Foreign Affairs Committee and he has nothing to prove his case. And India has been saying for a very long time that what proof do you have about any involvement of any Indian diplomat or Indian government in the killing of a Khalistani terrorist called Hardeep Singh Nijjar? He has been unable to prove anything because he knows he can prove nothing. He's got to appear a little bit aggressive. He tried to actually accost Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the ASEAN. He's completely desperate, this Trudeau fellow. The third angle that I want to point out, ladies and gentlemen, is that please keep in mind that Trudeau is not acting on his own. My view is that Trudeau is part of the same Western alliance that is anti-Modi, that is anti-BJP, which would rather see a Congress government in power or any other weak government in power, a maneuverable government in power. And please keep in mind that Trudeau supported the Congress party's position on the so-called farmers' protest, and that this whole political establishment in India that was seen to be pro-farmers, that said that farmers are anti-BJP and anti-Modi, has got a shock after the Haryana elections. And maybe it's possible, I'm not saying it is, that what Trudeau is doing is part of an overall global response to Modi and the BJP being stronger after the Haryana elections. Ladies and gentlemen, the Canadians should know what is better for them. And if there are Canadians watching this program tonight, please realize what is your country being seen as. Your country has become like Pakistan. You're a haven for terrorists. Haven for terrorists. Like Pakistan was giving sanctuary to Osama bin Laden, you're giving sanctuary to the Khalistani terrorists. There's no difference. There's no difference. Ladies and gentlemen, the other point is that the Canadians must understand that on their soil today, there are celebrations of the assassinations of prime ministers in other countries. The assassination of Indira Gandhi was celebrated on the streets of Canada. And the Canadians did absolutely nothing except make a few noises. This is unacceptable for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely delighted that the Prime Minister and the government of India has carried out a surgical strike on Canada. And let me tell you, the Canadians are in absolutely no position to respond. They are a weak country. They depend on us. They broke off all diplomatic links with us without any evidence to substantiate their claims. They have given up their terrorists. They've handed Canadian citizenship to terrorists who are working to kill Indian politicians and Indian political personalities. They have actively supported and sponsored people who are targeting India's sovereignty. They have allowed the glorification of assassinations of Indian prime ministers. They've been harboring terrorists like Pannoon, like Niger and does nothing to them, when Indian diplomats have threats to their life, then the Canadians yet do nothing about it. And ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to sit down and let the Canadians get away. Canadians must also understand one last thing, that when 329 people were killed on an Air India plane 182 on its way to Canada, Canadians must remind Trudeau that out of those 329 killed, only 24 were Indians. The majority of them, over 250, were Canadians. And today, it is a tragedy that Canada is teaming up with the same terrorists who have bombed planes and killed Canadians. If this continues to be the road they are on, they are the next Pakistan, the next Afghanistan. Nothing more needs to be said. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to you with two debates tonight. First, the situation with Canada. We're observing it. We're going to hit the Canadians hard. We're going to teach them a lesson. We're going to put them in their place. The satellite state of the United States of America is getting too big for its boots. That's debate one and debate two this evening, ladies and gentlemen. There are many unanswered questions, and I think it is not only the so-called mafia angle. It's not just the Lawrence Bishnoi angle. There appears to be a real estate angle behind the murder of Baba Siddiqui, the Bollywood link man in Mumbai politics. All of Bollywood is completely shaken. I wonder why. What have they got to do with this man? And here are the headlines this Monday evening on the debate tonight. Major escalation between India and Canada. The Ministry of External Affairs half an hour back has called out the Trudeau government for its hostility towards India as Canada recalls, as India recalls our High Commissioner in Ottawa, Sanjay Verma, and all other diplomats who have been defined as peoples of interest in the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Provided credible, irrefutable evidence of ties between agents of the government of India and a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Now it is time for India to live up to what it said it would do and look into those allegations.
After summoning the Canadian charge d'affaires, India is on an all-out diplomatic pullout as the government of India decides to withdraw the High Commissioner and 41 diplomats and officials from Canada. The man who opposed slum redevelopment projects, advocating for transparency for residents, a very prominent NCP leader, Baba Siddiqui, was shot dead on Dashera. Police goes beyond the Lawrence Bishnoi mafia angle and will now probe the SRA project disputes possible connection with his murder. Ladies and gentlemen, start with the story which we led with today, first broke here on Republic. India has absolutely rejected Canada's charge against Indian High Commissioner and other diplomats, calling them persons of interest in the investigation into Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder. Essentially, what Canada has done is that they're trying to put pressure on India. In turn, we put the pressure back. We have withdrawn our High Commissioner and taken the battle to where it needs to be, to make the very weak Trudeau answerable for what he's doing.
The Canadian charge d'affaires in New Delhi was summoned by the Ministry of External Affairs today. After being summoned to the MEA, here's how the defiant Canadian charge d'affaires went on to repeat the baseless allegation with no evidence in sight.
The government of Canada has done what India has long been asking for. Canada has provided credible, irrefutable evidence of ties between agents of the government of India and a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Now it is time for India to live up to what it said it would do and look into those allegations. it is in the interest of both our countries and the peoples of our countries to get to the bottom of this. Canada stands ready to cooperate with India.
This comes as the diplomatic row between India and Canada further escalated earlier today, with MEA's fiery retort to their Canadian counterpart of their latest transgression. It all started after Trudeau named the Indian High Commissioner in Canada as a person of interest in its investigation into Nijjar's killing, and the MEA was having none of it.
In its strongest position yet, India has personally named and shamed Justin Trudeau for his open hostility towards India, because of which his government has indulged with anti-India Khalistani elements from Canadian soil. In fact, the statement goes on to narrate how over the last few years we have seen the Canadian governments even fast-tracking citizenship requests of these elements, these fugitives of law, because they have indulged in activities which compromise India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Later, India also summoned the Charge d'Affaires of Canada to New Delhi and issued the démarche in which Canada was clearly told that many of their members of the diplomatic team here are indulging in activities which are incompatible with their diplomatic status, which means that maybe they are doing things which compromise India's national security.
This is not the only bout of exchange India and Canada have had over Nijjar killing saga. In the past, India was forced to take down diplomatic measures, including revocation of diplomatic immunity of over 41 Canadian diplomats in October last year, amid the row over false allegations. Meanwhile, India has maintained its stance.
The context is that in Canada, we feel that the Canadian politics has given space to violent and extreme political opinions which advocate separatism from India, including through violent means. And these people have been accommodated in Canadian politics. If you have a reason to make such an allegation, please share the evidence with us. We are not ruling out an investigation and looking at anything which they may have to offer. They haven't done so.
They seem to be driven by vote bank politics, and their responses have all been, to the best of my understanding, actually constrained by what they regard as vote bank compulsions on them. We made it very clear, and I've done so sometimes even in public, which is that if there are activities which are permitted from Canada which impinge on our sovereignty, territorial integrity, on our security, then we will have to respond. So it is something which is I would say, a continuing conversation with Canada, not always a satisfactory conversation, but it is something on which we have been very, very clear.
As India, in the most fiercest manner, calls out Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau for the first time in its response by name, the biggest question is, are Trudeau's action a result of his dwindling strength in the House of Commons, as allies abandon him just ahead of the elections?
Geopolitical strategist Abhijit Chawda. Anis Faruqi is a journalist from Canada. He's pro-Trudeau. Terry Miluski is a senior journalist also joining us tonight from Canada. Dr. Joseph Chalil is author and publisher of the Universal News Network. And Professor Madhav Nalapat of the Manipal Research Group is a well-known strategist. Now, the sudden escalation is one-sided. Let's make it clear this time. I don't know how to tell the Canadians this, but, Terry, Anis, no disrespect, we don't care as much about Canada. And the principal reason why we don't care as much about Canada is because compared to India, you're a small country. We don't have any dependencies on you. You are a smaller economy. And as you understand nowadays, Terry and Anis, everything in the world is based on the scale and size of your economy. So Canada is not as relevant. And you see this also in global forums. You know, nobody quite cares much about Trudeau. He's sort of a hanger-on. But it's okay. He almost tried to accost Modi at ASEAN, I heard. My question is, and I want to open this up with Professor Nalapat, what's the sudden action from Trudeau's side all about? He's got to win an election, but he's getting desperate. There must be some immediate trigger.
Well, Arnab, I've been saying for quite some time, several years, about what I call the Sino-Wahhabi lobby, the lobby in which the Chinese Communist Party leadership supports extremist groups, including in countries in the Middle East, many of whom are now active against the state of Israel. And unfortunately, the Trudeau seems to have more than a normal share, his party, of such elements or alliances with them. And what he is doing now is to try and create a wedge between India and the West. Now, Dr. Joseph Chalal is a friend of mine. Yes. He has been working very hard to establish India and the US as firm partners in security in the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
And that's a necessary step. Now, what is Trudeau up to? He's up to breaking this coming together of India and the United States and other Western countries on matters of security, which are of utmost importance to the Indo-Pacific.
So you're saying that you're saying Trudeau's working on the behest of a Chinese lobby
from this kind of
you're saying that Trudeau's behaving.
I want to say, what do you mean by an agent? What is an agent, for God's sake? I can understand an official. Trudeau may meet somebody in the course of a campaign, and that somebody may do something awful. Does that mean that Trudeau is an agent to that person? I'm sorry, Arnab, but Justin Trudeau is functioning, whether wittingly or not, most likely unwittingly, I hope, as an agent of this policy of the Sino-Wahhabi lobby to drive a wedge between India and the West. And that, unfortunately, Trudeau is now the spearhead of that lobby among the G7 countries. Thank you, Arnab.
Thank you. Is it only that, Anis, or are there also internal political factors that Trudeau has to be seen to be pro-Khalistan? He has to try and bring back the pro-Khalistan leader, Jagmeet Singh, who was his main crutch, into the alliance, that he cannot have a confidence vote today without the full and total support of the pro-Khalistan lobby?
Well, Arnab, don't mix the Canadian internal electoral politics with this Khalistani thing, because it's just a little bit of minority. It does not reflect the entire Canadian. If Justin Trudeau has to win an election in coming days, he has to rely upon non-ethnic votes more than the Khalistani or South Asian votes. So that's not in the mix. Don't put that into the mix. The other thing is that you said I'm a pro-Trudeau. I'm not a pro-Trudeau. I'm a pro-Canadian. I may or may not vote for Justin Trudeau, but that's based on other factors, not on India or Khalistan or China or Pakistan. So for Canadians, this is not a news that has been blown out of proportion. It's just a business as usual in the fine Monday morning here. And we know that how the sovereign countries respond in a responsible manner. We know how our Foreign Ministry and Global Affairs Department reacts on things based on certain evidences. It's not just in Trudeau's government, it is the institutions.
What evidence, Anis? Anis, may I ask you this? May I ask you this? The real question is, allow me please to complete. You know, the fact of the matter is, it's been far too long and on far grave an issue. We have Terry with us. I remember the last time Terry came on the program, and he's also a Canadian. He said, and I remember, I hope I'm not misquoting you, that in an important country, important relationship, you cannot respond without the hard evidence. Years have passed, and not a shred of evidence has been made available. You know, now without that, to escalate, I'm not sure why. Terry.
May I comment on that? You're right, I did say that the problem was the lack of evidence. The whole problem with Trudeau's démarches last September, saying that India was involved somehow in the of Ahmadinejad. The whole problem was that he didn't produce any evidence. Now he's made it worse. This is becoming a fiasco. You're right. He is set to lose the next election anyway. Maybe he's finished anyway, but he has compounded lack of evidence by now, apparently suggesting that Indian diplomats are involved, of which there is no evidence. To date, I've never heard any on either side of this. Nobody's suggested that the Indian High Commissioner has been actually involved, although many Khalistani, for the exception, they do make that allegation, but evidence-free. This is the problem. So Trudeau has made his position worse by making another unsubstantiated allegation. However, that does not mean it's unsubstantiated differently. It's not. If we're not talking about a diplomat, the American side has certainly produced a plentiful array of evidence, detailed, factual evidence about an alleged Indian plot to murder, among others, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, as well as Gopal Singh Pannone, the Chief Justice leader in the United States. Quote from the party indicted in the FBI's indictment, Nikhil Gupta, Nijjar is also the target. So it's one plot. The Americans have produced evidence, Trudeau has not. The difference is that in the American case, they are alleging a plot in which an Indian official, an intelligence employee of the Indian government, but not a senior diplomat, engaged with criminals who hire gangsters to kill a prominent Khalistani. And so they've been more focused and more careful in what they've suggested. And here's the big difference. India dismissed Trudeau's evidence-free allegations as absurd, but India has resolved to take the American allegations very seriously, set up a committee to look into it. We're not dismissing this as absurd.
Terry, may I?
And it's the same plot. It's the same plot.
Terry, may I say this? See, yes. Even if that were to be the case, and I'll take 30 seconds to respond to you, you are saying that the Americans have also made similar charges against India. Let me tell you, first of all, I don't know why these Khalistanis are getting targeted or killed. Nobody knows. These are unknown people, first of all. Second, Terry, you and I live in the real world. You don't have to see documentaries to understand the depth to which the CIA operates. You don't, I mean, let's realize what the CIA has done over the decades. How many people have you killed? How many heads of state have you killed, assassinated? How many assassination attempts have the Americans carried out over the years? If the KGB has carried out 100, then the CIA has carried out 10 times as many. The only thing is the Americans are now presenting a holier-than-thou attitude. Oh, my God, you know, you're sending your agents into our country. I mean, every second Hollywood movie is an oversized representation of the reality that you meddle into the affairs of every other country. But I'm not going there. You can say, well, we have better lines of deniability, and you are new into the business, and the Israelis are older into the business. That's clear. But every country has the right to pursue its national interest, and it's the job of every other country to defend its national interest. That is not the point. One point I want to make it clear tonight. Viewers, please remember, and I'll say it again, the deep state of America, which includes satellite states like Canada, does not like Narendra Modi. It does not like a strong government in India which pursues an independent foreign policy and will do whatever the hell it wants on Ukraine or Russia or Gaza and refuse to be pulled into any camp. It is entirely possible, I believe, and I'm only saying this circumstantially, Abhijit, because the same lobby was very happy that the 55-year-old boy wonder called Rahul Gandhi was emerging as an opposition leader till they got a dose of reality when Rahul Gandhi lost his 88th election. I'm not saying that the Western democracies, so-called democracies, are coming out in Rahul Gandhi's interest, but there's clearly no fans of Modi. Clearly no fans of Modi. Modi becoming stronger by the day is a huge danger for the Americans. And the Canadians, in my view, have no independent intelligence policy, no independent geostrategic policy. I do not even consider them to be a sovereign nation in real terms. They are yet another American state, pretending to be sovereign country. Abhijit, Is this local, global, or something more?
Yes, Arnab. So what's happened today has been a long time coming. It's from my perspective, it was merely a matter of time before we come to where we have come to today. And the events of today, I don't think it's connected to Canada's electoral politics or electoral calculations. Mr. Trudeau is merely Canada's equivalent of Shehbaz Sharif. Okay, and we need to look a little deeper to understand what this truly signifies, because Canada is a geopolitically insignificant nation, and like you very correctly said, Canada is its foreign policy and all policies are an extension of US policy. Now, as we know, the US has been accusing India of attempting to eliminate certain terrorists, US-backed terrorists on American soil. And Terry was complaining that India doesn't take Canada seriously, but we take the US seriously. Well, Canada is insignificant. The US matters. So that's why we take the US seriously. So there's this pattern that the US has been harboring Khalistani terrorists on its soil. The UK has been doing that. The Australians have been doing that. And Canada has been doing this as well. So what we are seeing is a US-led nexus to target India, essentially. And Canada has declared India's High Commissioner diplomats as persons of interest in a murder case involving another terrorist. And they have been instigating Khalistani terrorists against Indian diplomats who are no longer safe in Canada. So these are glaring violations of Canada's responsibility under the Vienna Convention. An insignificant nation like Canada would not dare to do that on its own. It's got the backing and the approval of its big brother, of its big daddy. And like you said, India's economy is growing. India is projected to become the next China if things continue the same way by a 2050 horizon. And that is a big problem for the United States. It does not want any new adversaries or competitors, potential adversaries, to emerge in the long run. So it's doing everything to slow down India's economic growth in a variety of ways. And the best way to do it is to essentially, the best option for them is to have a regime change in India. That's their greatest dream.
But Abhijit, they don't understand how Modi's mind works. Modi is too strong a leader and too popular a leader to respond in any way to American pressure. I don't know if you heard this, but Donald Trump recently gave a broadcast. There was a podcast recently, and Donald Trump was asked, what do you think of Modi? He said, no, he's a great guy, he's a very strong guy, he's absolutely like an amazing leader. And he said, I kept telling Modi, I know these people are bothering you, one particular country. He said, we can help you with that. When he was president, the American president told the Indian prime minister, we can help you. Trump told Modi, I can help you sort out that country. And then Trump said, Narendra Modi looked at him and said, don't worry, I know how to deal with them. We have dealt with them. We will teach them a lesson on our own. And Trump said, my God, I don't know. Nobody would speak like that. So I think where they misread is the intent, popularity, and style of Narendra Modi. And this is something where I think the Americans are misreading things. Joseph Chalil, they're using an old American playbook, American/Canadian/British playbook to work on Modi. In fact, it may make Narendra Modi dig in his heels and hit back even more.
Unfortunately, I think chose the wrong target this time. Justin Trudeau, again, I have a personal relationship with Canada. I have a few hundred employees in Canada. We have a running factory in Canada, and I'm struggling to export products to India because of the duties and lack of relationships between the two countries. And I was selected as part of a trade delegation by Prime Minister Trudeau to come to India before everything went haywire. Unfortunately, what's happening is that the recent popularity polls in Canada showing Justin Trudeau at 26%. His approval rates are sinking to the lowest level. He lost 2 by-elections recently in the past few weeks. And Jagmeet Singh has actually pulled plug. And I think he's actually blackmailing Trudeau on what he wants. So he's showing the boogeyman, showing that, hey, the enemy is not Trudeau, the enemy is India, and trying to make a fight with India when there is nothing there. They've been talking about these credible allegations for a long time without showing anybody anything. But unfortunately, the Canadians are suffering. The Canadian people are suffering because the inflation's gone up. The price at grocery stores has gone up. The price of fuel is gone up in Canada. So it's unaffordable to live in Canada. And in fact, I have neighbors in Florida who are all relocated from Canada because they can't afford to live in Canada. So it is Justin Trudeau is most unpopular as we speak, and he's trying to find a boogeyman And he just chose the wrong boogeyman in this time, which is Prime Minister Modi. And I don't think he expected that India will pull all the diplomatic staff from Canada. I don't think it went this far. But I do not think the Canadians like him. I speak to Canadians every day. I haven't heard a single person said, I support my Prime Minister. And as I said, I have a few hundred employees in Canada. I cannot support this Prime Minister, and I hope and pray he goes away.
You see, okay, so let me contest this view that Anis put out. Anis, I disagree with you. You say that Trudeau has got nothing to do with, he's not doing this for domestic politics. And my view is that this is entirely, almost greatly to do with domestic politics, with perhaps a little nudge from the Americans. Now, Trudeau had called an early election in September 2021. He thought that I will get a lot of seats. Another election is coming up in how much time, Anis? I think there should be one soon. How much time is there for the next election?
Yeah, next year.
Next year. So he's in that one-year run-up. And presently he had about, I think, about 175 to 180 seats in 338-member House of Commons. Then Jagmeet Singh pulled out. That's 24 seats, bringing him closer to about 150 to 155, well short of a halfway mark. And increasingly, the more he depends on the Khalistanis, the more vocal he starts becoming. And Jagmeet Singh is also vocal. The only way for Trudeau to hang in there is to get the 100% support of the Khalistani party. He's made a political choice. He's made a political choice.
Well, if this was the case, then his popularity would have been, like in 1 year from the Nij's case to now, has skyrocketed, but it's going downwards. That has actually nothing to do...
Because you're suffering. Because, you see, one point is you must understand we are one of the largest economies in the country, in the world. You want to black us out, you're going to be in trouble.
That's not the case, because you see, we deal economy differently than the internal security. We don't mix
things together. It's so possible. How can you do that? Indian students will not come there. Anyway, it's a terrible, terrible situation there in Canada. We see the broken homes, the broken streets, the lack of municipal facilities, the lack of housing. It's terrible. It's like worse than a third world country. Large parts.
Well, that's not the case. No,
well, I mean, we have the pictures. We know what's happening, you know, there. But you need India.
Things are okay. Things are okay. Let's not worry about that part, because we know how to deal. There are provincial governments, there are federal governments. So let's not mix everything
best
together.
of luck to you, best of luck to you. But the fact is that, can you tell me, Anis, can you tell me, you know, you interfere so much into our politics. You're worried about our farmers. And Trudeau started crying, saying, I'm so concerned about farmers in India. But and he spoke about human rights. And then there was a truckers' protest where, short of sending the truckers to the gallows, he did everything. He was willing to almost hang them without trial. He crushed them. He called the exceptional powers of the Emergency Act. He cracked down like an absolute fascist. So my point is, what right, Danis, did he have to try and lecture us and then
order them?
Do you support what he did with the truckers?
No, when the courts issue an order, then we have to act. So that has nothing to do with the farmer. Farmers were like, you see, like what's happening here. Whatever I've heard so far, it seems like a very good script for a next Bollywood movie.
I'm sorry, I just, Anis, I don't know what you're saying. You are in Canada, you should know that it was Trudeau, don't blame it on the court. It was Trudeau who invoked the powers of the Emergency Act, all because there was a freedom convoy blockade. All those truckers wanted was freedom. They were fighting for freedom. You were denying them freedom, and he behaved like a dictator. I'm only putting that in the context of the crocodile tears he was shedding for farmers in India.
As I said earlier, this was an internal matter. It does not impact on the politics.
No, then the so-called farmers' protest in India is a totally internal matter.
Farmers were
farmers' protest in India. What are you talking about? No, I'm sorry. Farmers' protest in India is not an internal matter of India. But the truckers' strike in Canada is an internal matter of Canada. I mean, this Abhijit would like to respond to you. Please don't have this post-colonial thinking. Yes, please, Abhijit.
I think when our people go and immigrate to a foreign country and get citizenship, they kind of put on, acquire the habits of the colonizers. So exactly like you said, when something happens in India and they want to interfere, that's perfectly all right. But when we speak about what happened in Canada and the injustice that was done to the farmers, that's our internal matter. What sort of double standards are these, sir? So what happened is that this guy, Trudeau, he froze the bank accounts of the farmers. He crushed them. He crushed their spirits, and he actually had horses run down people on wheelchairs. That's what it did. The guy is a complete fascist. He's a little tin pot martinet. That's the kind of guy he is. But over here, he's portrayed as some sort of a messiah of the masses. So the guy is a complete fraud, and it's amply clear that if there is a free and fair election in Canada, then he's going to be swept out of office. No doubt about that. And that's the situation we are seeing right now, and that's why he's clutching at straws and dilly-dallying with the Khalistanis, and even that seems to be not working right now because Jagmeet Singh has withdrawn support for Trudeau. So I think he's kind of adrift right now.
No,
but the situation.
Let me follow up with another question. Our dear friend Professor Nalapat mentioned Chinese interference. I have a question in that regard. He says he has evidence against India, but has shown no evidence. Now, Terry and Anis, while giving testimony before a commission conducting a public inquiry into foreign interference in 2019 Canadian elections and 2021 Canadian elections, Trudeau hinted at Chinese interference, but he refused to push the case. And he refused to make a public statement about Chinese interference. He refused to provide any evidence about Chinese interference. He went totally soft on China, which is accused of having a hand in putting him in office. He admitted there was Chinese interference. He said it would seem improbable that the Chinese government itself would have a preference in the election. He became an advocate of China. He admitted there was interference, but at the same time defended Xi Jinping and refused to provide any evidence into the matter and told his intelligence agencies not to pursue the case.
Arnab, I want to make a point very clearly, and that point is that there are many facilitators, frankly, of violence and terror in Canada. And I do wish our Canadian friend would go into those records for the simple reason that they're also neck deep in narcotics. And narcotics is a nasty business. They're neck deep in illicit cash, in money laundering. There's a vast money laundering network. And I'm sorry to say, the UK also, many of the agencies seem to be sleeping at the wheel where money laundering is concerned, so long as the money is parked in London.
Anis, my question, Anis and Terry, my question is, it's a very...
Narcotics is a dangerous business.
Yeah, it's a very...
I think you are running out of allegations and options for Canada, and these are very, very small allegations.
So my point is, unfortunately,
without any
you don't
evidence.
get that kind of view on Canadian media, because the Canadian media is fed a diet of rabidly anti-Indian stuff. And I'd like to say about the United States. The United States, like India, is a democracy. There are multiple opinions at work. We don't know what the next election is going to turn out to be like. But one thing I can tell you, it won't be Joe Biden who's the president. So quite frankly, Arnab, I don't know what our Canadian friend is talking about, but the reality situation is...
I would like to ask both our panelists from Canada a simple...
And who wants to separate
I just want to bring a very elementary analytical point before you.
Through any means possible.
Yeah, I just want to make one point here. See,
I agree with Joe. Canada is a good country, a wonderful country, and I certainly hope India-Canada relations becomes better, but it can't become better if this kind of direct, ridiculous allegation is levied against India, which is today the linchpin of security for democracies in the Indo-Pacific. And the one thing the Chinese want most is to break the India-US ties. And may I say one thing, Justin Trudeau, whether willingly or not, I hope unwillingly, is doing as active a job as possible in trying to break India-Canada ties, forget that. India-West ties. And both India and the West have come together in confronting China. And I would say Biden has not been very active. But if you have some other president, that president, I think, given the volume of information, will be much more active. So, Arnab, I'm sorry, but the reality is Justin Trudeau, for better or for worse, he is trying to separate the West from India. That's precisely what China wants. His father was also seen as pro-China. And all I can say, whether he's pro-China or pro-Portugal, I don't know. But he's acting in a manner that directly benefits the geopolitical.
Correct. Let me get a response from Terry, and I have a counter question to him as well. Terry, in the Chinese case, Trudeau admitted that the Chinese officials interfered in the Canadian election. But he went on to say that just because the Chinese officials were involved, you cannot make a charge against the Chinese government. Just because some people of Chinese origin or Chinese officials were involved, you cannot make a charge against the Chinese government. And he used the word probability. And he said it was very improbable that the Chinese government itself would have a preference in the election. So he tried to draw a line of difference between Chinese officials / nationals and the Chinese government. In his handling of the Indian case, it is exactly the opposite. It seems if the weather changes in Canada today, he will directly blame Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Why is that the case? Why such a difference in handling?
Personally, I think there's a much simpler explanation than some grand strategy to be a US puppet and to tear down India. I wish they had a plan. They don't. It's happened because of negligence and stupidity. For 40 years, Indian governments of every stripe, and I mean liberals, conservatives, NDP, the whole lot have been whistling past the graveyard, ignoring and pandering to potential and the actual use of violence by Khalistanis. And that's what's brought us here today, this particular case where India appears to have got fed up with the Canadian relaxed attitude, to put it mildly, toward serious violence. Indeed, I mentioned the Air India bombing, wiped out 331 completely innocent civilians in 1985. So what's been happening is that the Canadians have been ignoring the violence and, as I say, the potential for violence by Khalistanis in their vote bank interest, as you have rightly pointed out. But that's about it. We are not thinking of some grand strategy. If we get together with the Americans and some calculated scheme to make India look bad or like a bunch of murderers, this has been driven by the evidence. It wasn't that the Canadians or the Americans wanted to find out that India might have been behind the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
No, it's not a grand conspiracy theory, Terry. It's a reality. I mean, all of this is Five Eyes intelligence, supposedly, and that's the way the Canadians have themselves said it. So it's American intelligence that you're depending on. The fact of the matter is, I believe that this is not a small development. It's the Americans who want to lever on India. It's not the Canadians. It's the Americans who want to lever on India, and they're using Canada as a proxy.
Well, they've been very nice to the Indians, if you're right about that. Because look, I mean, Trudeau got up and made a big speech about how this is unacceptable law breaking by India. The Americans didn't make any grand speech. The Americans didn't point fingers at the Modi government. They simply said, and they said it asked for. That's all. They just produced a written indictment, not very sexy for television. They kept it very discreet, named an employee of the Indian government, not the Indian government. Americans were much more tactful and
losing the line there.
Calculated about the allegations that they made, which were backed by evidence of the same plot that was carried out against Nijjar. And by the way, let's remember that
to this proxy allegation, because proxy
assassination, and those all seem to be low-life criminal punks.
Yeah, what did you say, Anis?
I'm saying, let me respond to this proxy allegation. How could Canada be a proxy when a crime happens on its land from the agents of Indian RAW coming to Canada, killing one of the Canadian citizens. How could we have to respond what we do?
When you are saying today, Anis, let me ask you this. Since you are saying this, that, an Indian RAW agent flew down in a parachute, shot through Canadian airspace, went through like Batman in the night and came and then killed the terrorists and went away, and then he called the Indian government, said, I've done this, killed this person. The Indian government said, kill a few more, and then the killings continued. I mean, this sounds like a C-grade Hollywood movie to me.
And they got caught. And they got caught this time. They thought they will get... the problem is...
No, but one minute. When you say they got caught... Okay, let me ask you this. Anis, let me ask you this. Since you are saying they got caught and this happened, and I'm asking you, the Canadian government itself has given no shred of evidence, shouldn't you as a journalist not be saying things with such an act of finality without having any information with you yourself?
I have full trust in the...
Come on now, trust is... This is not an answer a journalist should give. I have full trust.
No, the agencies would not put allegation without any evidence.
Agencies for it. When you are defending them, you are saying, I'm just defending them as a loyal Canadian citizen. I don't care what the truth is.
Justin Trudeau, I am defending my agencies, my security agencies, my authorities, because they are not non-political. They are apolitical.
Yeah, so you have blind trust in the Canadian authorities?
Not blind trust, sir. We have years of experience in this.
You have years of experience in?
In the security of our state, like how to protect our country. It's not about
you do. Okay, one minute. Just Abhijit, 1 minute. I have to counter him there. You have years of understanding on how to defend your state, how to defend your country. Yeah,
we know how
and that is why your country showed an effigy of Prime Minister Narendra Modi in chains and in a cage, in a parade in the greater Toronto area.
Free country. That's the free country.
Free country. Yeah. What if Pakistan were to say, free country, we allowed Osama in? This is your problem.
It has been worse than that. It has been worse than that, Arnab. Don't forget, sorry to intervene, just a very brief point, that in the last 2 days, there has been an effigy of the Indian High Commission in Canada, the stake, as it were, with ties of Khalistan forever, and there have been calls for violence against India. And this has been tolerated on the streets of Canada.
I'd like to ask Anis that. Anis, the same people are threatening Canadian Hindus.
Yes.
I don't think...
Is that also freedom of expression?
I don't think that's happening in Canada.
Well,
it is a very small minority. If they do within the border of the law and order of the country.
But terrorists are a small minority.
There is no terrorist.
So why were you against Al-Qaeda? They're a small minority.
Well, whatever the world declares as a terrorist organization, Canada respects that.
1 minute. I mean, you also put out a huge parade celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi, showing blood coming out of her, of an image of
her.
Yes,
that was in Brampton last year.
That was in Brampton.
They continue to hold up the assassination of Indira Gandhi as a great event, a wonderful thing, and they continue to glorify the mastermind of the Air India bombing.
But that was not government supported, neither by any of the political party. It's just
level of government and no politician in Canada
exercising their rights.
This must stop.
No, I think this is, I mean, you're taking a blind position tonight. Abhijit is dying to come in. Yes, please, Abhijit.
So Canada has had a consistent policy of allowing unfriendly acts against India on its soil. It's not a one-off. It's been happening over and over again. And the stridency and the hostility has been increasing over time. And right now, this is the situation that we've got. And we have apologists for that who come on our channels and kind of defend what the Canadian government and establishment are allowing on their soil. It's one thing that it may or may not be within the purview of your Canadian laws, but these are hostile acts that you are supporting on your soil against a friendly nation. India and Canada are supposed to be friends, aren't we? We are supposed to have the same shared values and all that. And yet you insist on keeping on doing this, and then you have the temerity to accuse us of trying to assassinate some good-for-nothing terrorist on your soil. Show us the evidence. You have full trust and all that in your government. Well, I have full trust in my government and my agencies, and I'm telling you that no such thing has happened. So provide the evidence, or please keep quiet.
And what happens when you get the evidence? Would you accept that? Would you acknowledge that?
Show it. Facts are facts. I don't care.
Get it.
Facts don't care about feelings. Yeah. Show the evidence. Do you have it? You don't. All talk.
No, we do. We do not act.
Show it.
With expelling an ambassador.
If you have righteousness on your side, why don't you show it? Show it to the world how gloriously right.
Okay. Let me ask you. Let me ask you something. There is a person designated a terrorist on India's soil. You should respect your relationship with India, right? The person has carried out the killings and threatening to carry out the killings of more Indian public figures and personalities. When you take an application for citizenship or permanent residentship, you look into the academic or professional qualifications of the individual or the amount of capital the individual is bringing into your country before deciding on the person's immigration status. May I ask you, what was the unique qualification why you gave Nijjar, why you fast-tracked his citizenship? What did he bring? Medical skills, professional skills, management skills, technical skills, capital? What did he bring?
Very delicate.
Well,
it's very delicate.
Why did you give him a fast-track citizenship?
We would all like to know how he managed to get in and how it came that the minister in charge of immigration fumbled the answer, had to change the answer. It didn't really make sense to the first time he was rejected.
You're a country. I know you're being more loyal than the king tonight, Anis, and Terry is being more critical. But you're a country where 329 people were killed by the same Khalistani terrorists. There were 24 Indians, but more than 270 Canadians. And yet, people from the same point of view, same group, same thinking, were fast-track citizenship into Canada. Were you bringing Nijjar into Canada to get another hijacking organized from your country's soil so that more Canadians could be killed?
Well, that contains the assumption that we knew what we were doing. We didn't know what we were doing. They just let them all in. It's the Canadian way. Oh, you must be a good candidate for citizenship. We're not going to look too closely. And boom, here's the mystery. Oh, was he checked out? Answer, he really wasn't.
Anis.
Terry, remember that. The fear of persecution. Fear of persecution is a thing in Canada that we take very seriously. If a citizen in any other country is having threats to be killed, and this is quite evident from American agencies and the Canadian agencies that Nijjar, Pannu, and these people were...
So why didn't you give Saddam citizenship? Why didn't you give Saddam and Osama citizenship?
Well, we did not receive his application, but if he would have, then we would...
you would have given Osama citizenship.
You're absolutely
No, we would
correct.
have...
So the argument is that Osama bin Laden should be given citizenship had he applied for it because he could be persecuted elsewhere in the world. Well done.
Declared terrorists cannot enter into Canada, right? Is Nijjar or Pannu a declared terrorist by any other international organization? No. Right?
It's true.
It's just like an ordinary citizen applying through the Canadian immigration system. They go through the system, they pass the numbers, and they get into Canada.
So should all murderers, pedophiles, all of these people be sent to Canada because they perceived persecution in their own countries?
Well, there are quite clear evidence that one of our citizens was killed on our land by your agents. So why not?
Well, let me tell you, Nijjar, because you're caught on the wrong foot out here. You need to get your facts right. Nijjar was twice refused admission to reside in Canada because he submitted false documents. Did your immigration authorities not know that he was a liar? Why did you fast-track his citizenship?
They didn't seem to care. They didn't seem to even look it up. There is a complete mystery over why, after twice being rejected, phony marriages and phony documents, the third attempt, he somehow was allowed into Canada. It is true, by the way, fear of persecution is considered a legitimate reason to apply for asylum or refugee status and eventually become a Canadian.
Well,
but in this case, the mystery remains and it should be answered.
Yeah. See, he's made the allegations publicly. He should put the proof out publicly. India should pull back. We should completely seize all economic activity with Canada, any trading relationship. And that should be the end of the story. Then let them know how to deal with it. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is a pressure tactic by the Western countries, if America is involved, I can tell you, as has been said there by Dr. Joseph Chalil, they're trying out the wrong guy. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on that. And on the other side tonight, the interesting story of why it may not just be the Lawrence Bishnoi mafia angle as far as the killing of the assassination yesterday of Baba Siddiqui is concerned. There appears to be a real estate rivalry angle which has come out there, though nobody said anything on record. I'll get you details of that. And I also ask why Bollywood is so worried when I'm back.
Time for a quick breather. Arnab will be right back with the debate.